My adoptive sister dumped her billionaire fiance the moment he became a vegetable. So I raised my hand and asked if I could marry him instead. Not because I loved him, because I could see his soul standing beside the hospital bed. And I heard him say that whoever took care of him until he woke up would get $200 million. I had been able to see people's souls since I was a child. I could even hear them speak. As of that, my parents hated me. They called me strange. They called me unlucky. They treated my adoptive sister, Shana, like a princess, and treated me like a servant who happened to share their blood. Later, Shana landed herself a billionaire. Ethan Ford, young, powerful, rich, enough to make my parents smile at her, as if she had saved the whole family. But on the eve of their wedding, Ethan got into a car accident and fell into a coma. The doctor said he might wake up in 6 months, 3 years, maybe longer. Shana canceled the marriage without hesitation. Want me to wait on a vegetable hand and foot in my dreams? I'm not wasting my life on a useless man. I'd rather die than marry him. The room went silent. Mrs. Ford's face turned pale. My parents looked embarrassed, but they did not dare blame Shana. Just then, I saw Ethan's soul. He stood beside his own unconscious body, his face deathly pale, his eyes full of hatred. As he stared at Shana, "She's so heartless," the doctor clearly said. "I'd wake up within 6 months. If someone is willing to take care of me voluntarily. Once I wake up, I'll give her 200 million first thing, just to piss that bitch off." My eyes lit up. 200 million. That was enough for me to leave my parents forever. Enough to never eat leftovers again. Enough to never bend my head in front of Shana again. So I timidly raised my hand. How about I marry him? I really wanted that money. I thought Shana would stop me. Since childhood, her greatest pleasure had been taking away anything I wanted. But this time she snorted with laughter and casually shoved me forward. "You're just a nuisance at home anyway. Going to wait on him hand and foot is perfect for you. Look at you acting like you've never seen a man before. Throwing yourself at even a vegetable. How pathetic." I lowered my head and did not talk back, being able to escape that house and earn 200 million in the process. I could not wait. But Ethan's soul floated behind Shana, furious enough to shake the air. "Shana, you used to tell me Rose was always bullying you. So it was all lies. You the one who bullied her this whole time. I can't believe I was played like a fool by you." His resentment was heavy. Even the temperature around us seemed to drop. I pretended not to see him. I walked up to Mrs. Ford and said softly, "I'm the biological daughter of the family. If you don't mind, Mrs. Ford, I'm willing to marry Ethan in my sister's place." Mrs. Ford's worried expression cleared at once. After Ethan's accident, the Ford family had publicly said he would recover quickly. If he was abandoned by his fiancée at this time, the Ford family would become a joke and their stock price would suffer. I had become their lifeline. Mrs. Ford grabbed my hand. "You're really willing. However, Ethan is unconscious right now. He cannot get a marriage license or hold a wedding with you. As long as you take good care of him and fulfill your duties as his wife, when he wakes up, the position of the Ford family's daughter-in-law will be yours." I nodded obediently. I'm very good at taking care of people. I took care of my paralyzed grandparents when I was little. Ethan's soul frowned and floated to my side. He looked me up and down. A cold wave brushed over my spine. I pretended not to know he existed and kept selling myself. "I can cook. I can help people turn over and bathe. I am very patient." My parents chimed in eagerly. "That's right. Rose was born to serve others. Having her take care of Ethan is perfect. As her parents, we approve of this marriage. You should take her with you right away." They spoke as if they were throwing out garbage. Behind the door came Shauna's sharp laughter. A freak and a vegetable. 2 half-dead wastes. A perfect match. Ethan's soul shook his head again and again. Shana is too vicious. So all her previous kindness was an act. I must have been blind. When I wake up, I'll give Rose 200 million immediately. Watching him float through the wall, I silently prayed. "You promised it yourself. Do not forget the 200 million. Half an hour later, I saw Ethan's body in the special care ward. He was thin, covered in tubes, relying on machines to maintain his vital signs. Mrs. Ford wiped her tears. "He has a brain injury. The surgery was successful, but he still needs time to recover. At the shortest 6 months. At the longest 3 years. We want to maintain the Ford family's dignity, but we also want to find him a companion." Shana should have thought about it. We can afford professional nurses. Why would we need her to do menial work? I understood what Mrs. Ford meant. For a vegetative patient to wake up strong, emotional companionship mattered. Someone needed to talk to him, every day, keep his brain active, and pull his will back. But Ethan's critical condition could not be shown to outsiders. Mrs. Ford was busy stabilizing the company. Shana would have been the best choice. In the end, the task fell to me. Ethan's soul stood by the bed with an ashen face. I thought Shana would stick by me. She completely broke my heart. I just want someone reliable to read financial news to me every day. Why is that so hard? I don't know if Rose can handle it. After listening to him ramble for a while, I understood his body and consciousness were separated. That was why I could see his soul. When he woke up, his soul would return to his body. After thinking it over, I laid out my plan. I will report news to Ethan every day. I will play movies and music for him. I will describe the weather and let him smell different scents, so his perception of the outside world stays active. As for bathing and turning him over, if Mrs. Ford doesn't mind, let me do it too. Mrs. Ford and Ethan's soul both looked doubtful. They thought I was making empty promises. But the next day they were impressed. When Mrs. Ford came to the ward, I had just finished shaving Ethan's beard. He looked much cleaner. A newly released movie was playing on the television. I explained scenes to him, while holding a tablet and reading financial news aloud. Beside his pillow was fruit tea I had made myself, fragrance covering the smell of disinfectant. I had even set up my own bed in the ward, so I could stay with him all day and night. Mrs. Ford was deeply moved. Actually, you can sleep at the Ford house at night. I smiled and told her, as long as I don't have to live in my original home, I am happy anywhere besides. Staying here strengthens my emotional connection with Ethan. It is good for waking him up. After I spoke, I secretly glanced at Ethan's soul. His expression had softened. Shana was too spoiled. Even if she came, she couldn't take care of me properly. But Rose seems reliable. I guess this is a blessing in disguise. It seemed I had passed Ethan's evaluation. That made everything easier. I began closely watching his soul. He generally stayed in the ward. Only when the weather was good would he float outside for a short walk. The last time he had risked floating far away was to see Shana. Now that his heart was dead, he became obedient when I took care of Ethan. His soul rambled beside me. How does Rose know I love opera? She did her homework. Not bad. Why doesn't she find out my favorite fruit is durian, making me smell apples every day? I'm sick of it. The next day, I brought in a big durian and opened it in front of him. Ethan, guess how many sections of fruit our durian has?
I har got some boulder.
I would move Ethan's fingers, sometimes into a 6, sometimes into an 8. At first, his soul protested.
Stop it.
No one has ever dared treat me like this. Do you think I'm your toy? Later, he got used to it. He would roll his eyes, while secretly smiling when the smell of durian filled the ward. His soul's eyes brightened. I'm craving this so much. I have to wake up quickly, so I can eat it with Rose. After he said that, the line on the heart monitor showed a subtle fluctuation. I also started eating the durian happily. Thanks to you, this is my first time eating durian. Back home, I could only eat rotten apples and oranges. Ethan's soul froze. I had gotten used to looking at Ethan's face. I opened my heart and talked to him like a friend. Your mom thinks I'm working hard and gave me $100,000. But at home, I had to take care of Mom, Dad, and Shana. Before that, I also had Grandpa and Grandma. Now I only have to take care of you. It is actually much easier. His soul floated to my side and looked at me for a long time, without speaking. That day, I talked about many things, how my parents abused me, how Shana had bullied me all along. After pouring out those grievances, I felt lighter. But Ethan's eyes had turned red. Are Rose's parents sick? Why don't they cherish such a good biological daughter, and instead dote on a spoiled adoptive one? When I wake up, I must teach that family a lesson. For Rose, I was a little touched, but the lesson could wait. As long as the 200 million came through successfully, I would be grateful after that day. Ethan's soul and I became much closer. I still pretended not to know he existed, but I fulfilled every wish. He muttered. He also stayed by my side, constantly watching everything I did. For months passed like that. One day, while I was moving Ethan's fingers again, his finger moved on its own. Ethan's soul froze. My nerves and muscles seemed to be responding to external stimuli. Looks like my brain nerves are recovering well. Will I be able to return to my body soon? I joyfully notified Mrs. Ford. The good news spread quickly. A large group of experts came to consult on Ethan's case, and Shana burst into the ward. She glanced at Ethan on the bed with disdain, then roughly dragged me outside. I heard Ethan is about to wake up. I did not answer. Shana slapped me across the face. You really think you've landed the Ford family? How dare you give me attitude? Ethan's soul was so angry, he gritted his teeth.
Rose.
Are you stupid? Fight back. I've got your back. You won't fight back? Then I'll do it for you. But the fists he threw only stirred up cold wind. They could not hurt Shana at all. Shana poked my nose and warned me. If Ethan really wakes up, you better get lost. I'll make Ethan believe I've been the one taking care of him all along. After all, I'm the woman Ethan loves. Even when he wakes up, he will only marry me. I looked through the glass wall at Ethan's body. His fingers twitched again. Under the blanket beside him, Ethan's soul slowly turned his head toward Shana. For the first time, he stopped cursing. He smiled. Then the heart monitor suddenly jumped. The steady, rhythmic blip of the heart monitor suddenly hitched, erupting into a frantic, high-pitched staccato. Through the glass, I watched as Ethan's body convulsed slightly against the sterile white sheets. Beside the bed, Ethan's soul flickered like a candle in a windstorm. He turned his head toward me, his translucent eyes locking onto mine. For the first time since I'd met him, the bitter resentment etched into his ghostly features melted away. He shot me a wink, mouthed the words, "Watch this." And then, in a rush of displacing air that rattled the blinds, his soul snapped back into his physical body. The temperature in the hallway instantly warmed. The heavy, oppressive chill of his detached spirit was gone. Doctor, doctor. The shrill panic in the corridor didn't come from me. It came from Shana. Sensing her moment, my sister shoved me so hard my shoulder slammed into the doorframe. She practically tore the ward door off its hinges as she rushed inside, throwing herself at the edge of Ethan's bed just as a swarm of doctors and nurses flooded the room. I stayed by the door, rubbing my stinging cheek, watching the chaos unfold. "Please, you have to save him. Ethan, my love, I'm right here," Shana wailed, her voice thick with manufactured agony. She managed to squeeze out real tears, her manicured fingers clutching the edge of his blanket. "I haven't left your side for a single second. You have to wake up for me." I rolled my eyes. Her acting was so aggressively bad it belonged in a cheap daytime soap opera. "Miss, you need to step back. Give the doctor's room," a nurse demanded, trying to pry Shana away.
No.
"I am his fiance. I am the one who has been taking care of him all these months," Shana shrieked, making sure her voice was loud enough to carry.
I
"Won't leave him." Suddenly, the frantic beeping of the machine slowed into a steady, strong rhythm. The doctors froze. A heavy silence blanketed the room, broken only by the sound of Ethan taking a deep, shuddering breath. Slowly, his pale eyelids fluttered. "He's conscious," the lead doctor whispered in disbelief. "It's a miracle. Mr. Ford, can you hear me?" Ethan didn't look at the doctor. His dark, unfocused eyes slowly tracked across the ceiling, then drifted down to the woman clinging to his bedside. Shana gasped dramatically, throwing herself forward to grip his weak hand.
Ethan.
"Oh my God, Ethan, you're awake." "It's me, Shana. I've been waiting for you for so long. I prayed every single day, wiping your face, talking to you." For a moment, Ethan just stared at her. His throat worked as he swallowed dryly. When he spoke, his voice was like crushed gravel, raspy, weak, but dripping with an unmistakable chill. "You took care of me?" Shana nodded eagerly, her eyes shining with fake devotion. "Of course I did. Who else would? When everyone else gave up on you, I stayed. I bathed you, I read to you, I held your hand. I love you, Ethan." Standing by the door, I felt a familiar urge to laugh, but I bit my lip. Let her talk, I thought. Let her dig the hole as deep as she wants. Ethan's eyes narrowed slightly. He looked exhausted, but the sharp intelligence in his gaze was returning rapidly. "Is that so? Then what did you read to me yesterday, Shana?" Shana blinked, clearly thrown off by the specific question. I read you some poetry." "Yes, romantic poetry. To soothe your soul." "Poetry," Ethan croaked, a faint, mocking smile pulling at the corner of his chapped lips. "And what did I smell yesterday? To stimulate my senses. You must remember." Panic flashed in Shauna's eyes. She shot a desperate glance around the room, catching sight of a fruit basket someone had left weeks ago. "Apples," she blurted out. "You love apples. I brought you the freshest apples." Ethan closed his eyes. A deep, heavy sigh escaped him. "Doctor," Ethan said, his voice suddenly dropping its weak facade, hardening into the commanding tone of a billionaire who is entirely done with the circus. "Get this lying bitch away from me." Shana froze, the color draining from her face.
Ethan?
What are you talking about? It's me. You're Shana. My fiance abandoned me the moment she heard the word vegetable. Ethan sneered, pulling his hand out of her grasp as if she were diseased.
You.
Wouldn't know a financial report if it hit you in the face, and you just said I like apples. I despise apples. Right at that moment, the crowd at the door parted. Mrs. Ford, panting and flushed from sprinting down the hospital corridor, pushed her way in, followed closely by my adoptive parents, who had evidently come running the second they heard the news. "Ethan," Mrs. Ford sobbed, rushing past Shana and throwing her arms around her.
Son.
"Mom," Ethan muttered, his expression softening as he returned the embrace. Weakly, "I'm back." My parents, the people who had treated me like dirt my entire life, immediately swarmed in, their faces plastered with sycophantic smiles. "Oh, thank heavens," my father cheered. "Ethan, my boy, Shana has been so worried about you.
She
Hasn't slept properly in months. Is that right?" Ethan looked over his mother's shoulder, his glare pinning my parents to the floor. "Because I just woke up to her trying to steal credit for the last 4 months of my life. Mother, tell them." Mrs. Ford pulled back, wiping her eyes. She turned toward Shana, her maternal warmth vanishing in an instant, replaced by the ruthless aura of the Ford family matriarch.
Shana.
"What are you doing in this room?" "Mrs. Ford, Shana stammered, backing up a step. "When my son was on the brink of death, you broke the engagement and called him a useless waste of life," Mrs. Ford said, her voice echoing coldly off the tile walls. "You have not set foot in this hospital in 4 months.
The audacity you.
Have to stand there and lie to his face."
No.
"Ethan, she's lying," Shana cried out, playing the victim. She pointed a shaking, manicured finger at me. "It's Rose. Rose has been lying to you."
She's a
"Freak, Ethan. My parents forced her to come here because she's good for nothing else." "Shut up." Ethan's voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the room like a blade. He shifted, his gaze past Shana, past my horrified parents, and locked eyes with me. I was still standing near the door, my cheek burning red from where Shana had struck
me.
Ethan's eyes darkened as he noticed the angry mark on my face. "Who did that to you?" I ran into a door. I lied smoothly. I wasn't about to act like a damsel in
Distress.
"I just wanted my money." "She hit you," Ethan stated, reading right through me. He looked at Shana, his expression murderous. "Security." 2 massive hospital guards stepped into the room. "Remove her," Ethan ordered. "Remove all 3 of them. If the Woods family ever steps foot on this floor again or anywhere near the Ford Enterprise, consider our families at war. Throw them out." "Ethan, please," my father begged, realizing his golden goose was slipping away. "It's a misunderstanding. We gave you Rose." You threw away your biological daughter like trash," Ethan interrupted, disgust lacing every word. "You don't get to claim her now. Get out." The guards didn't hesitate. They grabbed Shana by the arms. She shrieked, thrashing her legs and cursing my name, but it did no good. My parents were ushered out right behind her, their faces pale with the realization of the absolute ruin they had just brought upon themselves. Once the room was clear of them, Ethan let out a long breath. The doctors swarmed him again, running tests, shining lights in his eyes, and murmuring excitedly about his miraculous recovery. Through the flurry of medical staff, Ethan kept his eyes on me. I gave him a polite, practiced smile, pretending I hadn't spent the last 4 months conversing with his ghost. 200 million, I chanted in my head. 200 million. Please don't forget. A week later, Ethan was transferred out of the ICU and into a luxurious private rehabilitation suite. The recovery process was brutal. His muscles had atrophied, and simply sitting up required monumental effort. The doctors provided a team of professional nurses, but Ethan was stubbornly uncooperative with all of them. He refused to eat the hospital food. He refused to let the physical therapists touch him without snapping at them. The only person he tolerated was me. "Tell them to leave," Ethan grumbled one afternoon, batting away a nurse trying to adjust his fore. "Rose can do it." I sighed, stepping forward and gently taking the foreline from the terrified
Nurse.
"You're being difficult on purpose," I murmured to him as the nurse scuttled out of the room. "I'm paying for the best care, and I prefer yours," he replied smoothly, leaning back against the pillows. He looked much better now. The sickly pallor was gone, replaced by a healthy, if slightly pale, complexion. His sharp jawline and piercing dark eyes were striking. It was easy to see why Shana had wanted him. Before the accident. "I'm not a nurse, Ethan. I'm just here until you're fully recovered," I reminded him as I adjusted the drip. He caught my wrist. His grip was surprisingly strong for a man who had been in a coma a week ago. "Why are you always talking about leaving?" he asked, his brow furrowing. "My mother promised you the position of the Ford family's daughter-in-law. It's yours." I gently pulled my hand away. That was just something she said in a moment of desperation to save the family stock prices. "I'm practical, Ethan. I don't expect a billionaire to marry a girl he barely knows just because she read him the financial news and fed him durian." Ethan's eyes glinted with an emotion I couldn't quite place. Amusement? Suspicion?
Yes.
"The durian," he murmured, leaning closer. "You know, Rose, I've been thinking about that. The doctor said my brain was entirely unresponsive. Yet, you seem to know exactly what I liked. Financial news over fiction. Durian over apples. Opera over pop music. It's almost as if you could hear me telling you what I wanted." My heart skipped a beat. A cold sweat broke out on the back of my neck. I kept my face perfectly blank. "I did my research. Your mother told me about your preferences." "My mother hates durian. She doesn't even allow it in the house," Ethan countered smoothly. "Try again." "I guessed," I said flatly, turning around to gather his lunch tray.
"You're a
"Weird guy. I figured you liked weird things." I heard him chuckle softly behind me. "You're a terrible liar, Rose. But I'll let you keep your secrets. For now." That evening, I sat on the small sofa in the corner of the suite, scrolling through apartment listings on my phone. I needed to plan my escape. The moment he was discharged, my job was done. My phone vibrated with an incoming text from an unknown number. "Check your bank account." Frowning, I opened my banking app. I stared at the screen. I closed the app.
I
Opened it again. The balance read $200,005.50. My breath hitched. My hands started to shake. I looked up. Ethan was lying in his bed, holding his phone, an infuriatingly smug smile on his face. 200 million? I choked out, my voice cracking. "I always pay my debts," Ethan said casually, not looking up from his screen. "Consider it back pay for enduring my family's drama, fighting off my ex-fiance, and making me smell like a tropical fruit market." I stood up, my mind racing. $200 million. It was real. I wasn't trapped anymore. I didn't have to tolerate the Woods family. I didn't have to be the unwanted shadow of a golden child. I was free. "Thank you," I said, my voice barely a whisper. Tears pricked my eyes, but I blinked them back fiercely. I marched over to the small closet and pulled out my duffel bag. Ethan's smug smile vanished instantly. He sat up, wincing slightly as his core muscles strained. "What are you doing?" "Packing," I said, tossing my few changes of clothes into the bag.
You
"Transferred the money. The deal is complete. You're awake, you're recovering, and I have enough money to disappear. I'll let your mother know I'm resigning." "Resigning?" Ethan's voice rose, edged with genuine panic. "You can't leave." "Why not?" I zipped the bag shut and slung it over my shoulder. "You don't need a caretaker anymore, Ethan. You need a physical therapist. I'm going to go buy a
house.
maybe a small island. I haven't decided yet." "Rose, stop." Ethan threw the blankets off and swung his legs over the side of
The bed.
"Don't get up, you'll tear your stitches," I warned, stepping back. "Then don't walk out that door," he snapped, his breathing heavy as he gripped the edge of the mattress. He stared at me, his dark eyes wide and vulnerable in a way I hadn't seen since he was a helpless spirit pacing the ward. "Please." I froze, my hand hovering over the doorknob. "Ethan, we don't owe each other anything anymore." "You think this was just a transaction to me?" he asked, his voice dropping low, thick with emotion. "You think I just watched you for 4 months, watched you defend me, watched you treat me like a human being when everyone else treated me like a corpse, and felt nothing?" I swallowed hard, looking away. "You didn't watch me. You were in a coma." Ethan let out a frustrated laugh. "Stop lying to me, Rose. And stop lying to yourself. You know exactly what happened. I know you saw me. I know you heard
Me.
The room went dead silent. I stared at the floor, my knuckles turning white, around the strap of my bag. I couldn't touch anything, Ethan whispered, his voice cracking. I was screaming into the void, and no one could hear me. My own fiance looked at my body with disgust. My friend stopped visiting after a week. But you
Talk to me.
You made sure I wasn't alone in the dark. When I said I hated the smell of apples the next day, there was durian.
When I complained about the
Silence. You played my favorite operas. You flinched when my soul got too close. Because the air was cold. You saw me, Rose.
He forced himself to stand.
His legs trembled violently, but he locked his knees, refusing to fall. I promised you 200 million if you stayed with me until I woke up. I kept my promise.
But now,
I'm asking you to stay because I want you to. Not as my nurse. Not as my caretaker. As my wife. I looked up at him. He was pale, sweating and shaking, but he stood tall. You don't know me, I whispered. Then let me learn, he replied, taking a slow, agonizing step toward me. Stay.
Rose.
Give me a chance to be the man who takes care of you for a change. I looked at the door. I looked at my duffel bag. And then I looked at the man who had fought his way back from the dead, partly because I gave him a reason.
2.
With a sigh, I dropped the bag. It hit the floor with a soft thud. Ethan exhaled a shaky breath of relief, his legs finally giving out. I closed the distance between us in a second, catching him before he hit the ground and helping him back onto the bed. You're an idiot, I muttered, adjusting his pillows. I'm your idiot, he replied, a weak grin spreading across his face.
And
Tomorrow, we're going shopping. If you're going to be a billionaire's wife, we need to upgrade your wardrobe. No more leftovers, Rose. Only the best. The next 2 months were a whirlwind. True to his word, Ethan recovered with terrifying speed. Once he was back at the helm of the Ford enterprise, he moved with the ruthless precision of a predator. I moved into the Ford family estate. Mrs. Ford, overjoyed by Ethan's recovery, and completely won over by my dedication, treated me like royalty. For the first time in my life, I had a family that actually asked what I wanted for dinner, what my favorite flowers were, and how my day went. But outside our bubble of happiness, Ethan was orchestrating a bloodbath. He didn't just cut ties with the Woods family, he systematically dismantled their entire legacy. My adoptive father's company relied heavily on supply chains controlled by the Ford conglomerate. Overnight, those contracts were voided. The penalties for breach of contract were enforced to the absolute maximum. Within 3 weeks, my father's company was hemorrhaging money.
banks.
Called in their loans, terrified of angering Ethan Ford. Then came Shana's turn. Shana had always prided herself on her social standing. She thrived in the elite circles of high society, floating from gala to gala on the arm of whoever was currently wealthy and influential. Ethan made one phone call. Suddenly, Shana was blacklisted. Invitations to charity balls vanished.
Country.
Club memberships were revoked without explanation. When she tried to latch onto a young tech heir to save her dying reputation, Ethan's associates casually mentioned that associating with the Woods family would mean losing the Ford family's investment capital. The tech heir dumped her via text message the next
day.
I watched it all unfold from the comfort of Ethan's penthouse office, sipping tea while reading the financial news. Only this time, I wasn't reading it aloud. To a coma patient. Are you feeling sorry for them? Ethan asked, looking up from his laptop.
He
Was sitting across from me, looking impeccably sharp in a tailored charcoal
suit.
The only lingering sign of his accident was a slight stiffness in his left shoulder. Not even a little bit, I admitted, taking a sip of my tea. But I do wonder when they're going to snap. I got my answer the very next day. Ethan and I were leaving a high-end boutique in the city center. We were finalizing the details of our wedding, and Ethan had insisted on personally designing my ring. As we stepped out onto the sidewalk heading toward the waiting town car, a shrill, hysterical voice echoed across the street. Rose, you bitch. I turned to see Shana charging at me. She looked completely unhinged. Her designer dress was wrinkled, her hair was a tangled mess, and her eyes were wide with a manic, desperate fury. She had a glass bottle in her hand, raised high above her head. You stole my life, she screamed, lunging toward me. Before I could even react, Ethan moved. He stepped in front of me, shielding my body with his own. With one swift, practiced motion, he grabbed Shana's wrist. Mid-swing, twisting it sharply, the bottle shattered against the pavement. Shana cried out in pain, dropping to her knees. Ethan's security detail was on her in a split second, pinning her to the ground. Ethan, please. Shana sobbed, thrashing against the guards. She manipulated.
You.
She's a witch. She told me she could see ghosts. She's crazy. You can't marry her. I'm the one who loves you. Ethan stared down at her, his expression colder than the ice in his veins during his coma. You're pathetic, Ethan said quietly, his voice carrying over the street noise. You threw me away because I was an inconvenience. Rose saved me because she has a heart. And for the record, I prefer her ghosts over your reality any day. He turned his back on her, placing a gentle hand on the small of my back to guide me into the car. Call the police, he instructed the head of security. Press charges for attempted assault. And ensure the Woods family is evicted from their estate by the end of the week. I'm tired of dealing with them. As the car pulled away, I looked out the tinted window. Shana was screaming on the sidewalk, a broken, ruined woman, surrounded by the police. My biological parents were nowhere to be seen, likely hiding from their creditors. I leaned my head against Ethan's shoulder. He wrapped an arm around me, pulling me close. Are you okay? He murmured, kissing the top of my head. I am, I said honestly. The heavy burden I had carried my entire life. The feeling of being unwanted, of being the unlucky, strange child, finally dissolved.
Completely.
Good. Ethan smiled, his eyes softening. Because we have a wedding to plan. And I have a very important question. Oh. I looked up at him. You already proposed, Ethan. You bought me a ring. That weighs more than my hand. Not that, he chuckled. He leaned in, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. If you can see souls, does that mean my grandparents are watching us right now? I burst out laughing, slapping his chest lightly.
No, idiot.
Souls only stick around if they have unfinished business. Your grandparents are long gone. Ethan looked visibly relieved. Thank God. I'd hate for them to see me fawning over you like a love-struck teenager. The wedding was the event of the decade. It was held in a sprawling botanical garden, draped in thousands of white roses and orchids. The guest list included the most powerful families in the country, but the only people who mattered to me were standing at the altar. Mrs. Ford sat in the front row, dabbing her eyes with a silk handkerchief, looking prouder than ever. As I walked down the aisle, the string quartet played a soft, beautiful rendition of the opera piece I used to play for Ethan in the hospital. I wore a custom-designed gown that shimmered like starlight, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't bending my head to anyone. I walked tall, stepping into a future I had chosen. Ethan stood at the altar, looking at me as if I were the only person in the universe. When I finally reached him, he took both of my hands in his. His hands were warm, solid, and full of life. As the officiant spoke, I tuned out the crowd. I looked at the man who had promised me $200 million to spite his ex, only to give me everything he had because he fell in love with me. I love you, he mouthed silently, a promise meant only for me. I smiled, squeezing his hands. Somewhere in the distance, far beyond the manicured gardens and the champagne flutes, my former family was living out the miserable fate they had earned. Shana was facing jail time for assault and fraud. My adoptive parents had declared bankruptcy, forced to move into a tiny, rundown apartment on the outskirts of the city. They had nothing left but each other, and knowing them, that was a punishment worse than death. But I didn't care about them anymore. I didn't need to look over my shoulder. And I didn't need to listen to the whispers of the dead to find my way. I love you, too, I whispered back. When Ethan pulled me in for the kiss, the crowd erupted into applause. But all I felt was his heartbeat against my chest, steady, strong, and undeniably mine.